Welcome back to another episode of the Cross-Border Capitalist, guys. Today we are going to be discussing, because it's very relevant, Hong Kong as a financial jurisdiction versus some of the other jurisdictions in the world. Reasons I say it's relevant, as I'm sure you've seen, Joe, and I'm sure probably some of our viewers have seen. Hong Kong has just overtaken Switzerland in terms of the amount of international assets parked there as an international financial hub. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I'm actually, like you said, I'm quite surprised about that, because it's one of those things where you know that Hong Kong's there or thereabouts, but I didn't expect it to be that close to being taking over, and then obviously to take over.
No, absolutely. Me neither. It's almost, in my view, almost like a secondary jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It might come up in conversation with a client once in a while, but it's certainly not your first recommendation or even a consideration, unless for really certain and specific reasons. And I guess we're here to talk about the reasons, one, that it's become a large financial hub, and two, what those reasons are and considerations we might actually start to take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and also I guess three to that is like whether you should care, as in like, should you be considering that, or actually is what you've already got in place, or, considering...
Does size matter? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, luckily for me, currently not. But for some people it does. So I think that's the other thing, is like, what does it mean to you? Because, should you be considering it? So, why don't we dive into a couple of the reasons, I guess, why it's happened?
Absolutely. So, fundamentally, the primary reason is, and it's the main pro, it's the main con. It's the main...
Well, it is the main...
Well, it's also a main con,
The main con,
Hong Kong is very close to mainland China, right? Hong Kong is kind of that financial doorway, shall we say, between the West, the rest of the world, the developed markets, and China and wider Asia.
Yeah.
Which is why it has become larger than Switzerland by a cap of assets sitting there, because it is no secret that China has a tremendous amount of wealthy individuals, and they're only getting wealthier, and there's only more of them. I think China's got the most ultra high net worth individuals.
Anyway.
Yeah, like growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. And I think that's that's always been the thing for me, is like, I've always seen Hong Kong as that Asia kind of market, right? Yeah. And then you in a way you could kind of say, like, it's how I've looked at it, is Hong Kong for Asia, is the UAE for the Middle East, is Switzerland for Europe, and I don't know what the US is, but
Puerto Rico.
True. So I think that's what I've always thought about it. And I guess you could argue that there's enough wealth in China and similar to make that happen.
Yes.
But it probably also shows that, people, and we've spoken about this on other episodes and stuff, like, people are not looking, like, when they're outside of Europe, they're not looking at Europe right now. They're not looking at Europe as a place to park their money.
Yeah.
They're obviously, and again, China, okay, it's had a lot of growth in high net worth individuals, but it's always been a place with a high amount per, capita, or whatever you want to call it. So if this has only just happened as a change, it shows that there is also maybe a mind shift for people here, where they, maybe some Chinese people were looking at Europe, i.e. Switzerland, and now they're not.
Yeah. And
now they're putting it in structures in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. And vice versa as well. Maybe European capital is flowing to Hong Kong, not all of it, but as a diversifier, and to build that access to China and Chinese markets, which is Chinese equities, Chinese IPO activity. Hong Kong-based IPO activity is off the charts. And generally, it's a really pro-business place where there's a lot of transactions, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of volume moving through. So again, it's the door swings both ways, I guess. And that is a huge pro, and that is why maybe it is seen as a little bit more of a favorable jurisdiction from non-Asian origins and originating capital, shall we say.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is, the UAE will probably be a bit, I say, disappointed, because that then maybe, does that say that money's shifting from Switzerland to Hong Kong, potentially, and not via the UAE.
Yeah.
In which is obviously what they would be preferring, is that, you know, this place is still far away from being a top place, and there's nothing to say that it won't be at some point. But, you know, I imagine that some of the pitch that the UAE would have liked to have had is that if you're going to move your money out of Switzerland, don't put it in Hong Kong, put it here. But it sounds like maybe actually they are.
Yeah, it goes to show that there are levels to the game, and whilst the UAE is doing a good job at trying to compete to be one of the world's largest financial hubs, it's what, 8th at the moment, something like that. It's about 8th from compared to the top 10. You've got London, New York, Switzerland, and these other jurisdictions with multiples of the amount of capital that is sitting there.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm saying they know they're not number one, right, here, for example, but they would be hoping to attract that capital from these other places instead of it going to the other places, if that makes sense. So I think that's why I'm saying they'd be disappointed that, you know, if this has bolstered Hong Kong's reputation, for example. I wonder as well whether, and this is a complete speculative kind of comment, but like, obviously, you know, with everything going on in the world at the moment, there was, you know, kind of Iranian businesses and stuff in the UAE, and obviously there's now geopolitical kind of tensions there. I wonder if some of that is driving to, you know, those businesses then looking at setting up in somewhere like Hong Kong, where it's kind of outside of the, do you know what I mean? Like outside of the jurisdiction, so that they can kind of, like just to get away from that, you know, tension maybe. So, but it's a very, I mean, the other thing to look at, I guess, is tax. You know, one thing that Hong Kong has that a lot of, especially developed financial places, they have a territorial tax system, meaning you will only pay tax on income that's earned within Hong Kong, right? Which, you know, okay, potentially if you've got assets that are generating assets in Hong Kong, that might, but you might be holding assets within a structure in Hong Kong that are elsewhere, that potentially wouldn't. So I think that's interesting, because most other developed financial hubs don't have that. They have a worldwide tax system, right? Even the UAE does. So corporate tax here is worldwide income. It's not just on UAE or outside. So I think that's interesting as well. That you know,
but that's on capital gains tax, right? Like or income arrived from investments.
Yeah, corporate tax. Yeah. So income-based taxes, so corporate tax or personal income tax. Obviously, personal income tax is different, because with personal income tax, you would only pay that if you were tax resident there, which would mean you live there, which might mean that you then pulled yourself into the corporate tax regime. So it's a little bit nuanced, but it's ultimately let's think about it from a corporate income tax perspective, you know, because most of these people that are parking large amounts of money there will be parking them within vehicles. Yeah. So, you know, taking that approach from a corporate income tax perspective, it's a territorial approach, which means that a lot of these people may also be benefiting from favourable tax rates as well.
Absolutely. And on that note then, as an expat or an international business owner, would you consider Hong Kong as a primary location to maybe set up your trust, or to, you know, set up your holding company and then your international investment and banking accounts? Or do you believe that actually it's better to still utilize these other jurisdictions, such as Switzerland is the example we've been using?
Yeah, and again, I think it comes back to, we talked about this on other kind of episode stuff, but like, it is personal preference, right? Because I knew Hong Kong was up there, but I had no idea, as I said a minute ago, that it was as close to overtaking Switzerland as obviously it was. So now, you know, and this is obviously great marketing for them, because now I'm looking at that and going, oh, okay, maybe this is a serious place. Like, maybe this is somewhere that, you know, that we should be considering and stuff. So again, I've had a couple of clients that have wanted to access the Asia market, and they've looked more at Singapore, but that's more, I would say, from a kind of residency perspective, but also from a trading company perspective. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it's, like I say, it's a good piece of marketing for the jurisdiction.
Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say, is like Singapore it is that gateway to the Asian world as well, but it doesn't quite have that close proximity, obviously both geographically, but politically, more importantly, to China.
No.
Which I think a lot of international investors take a lot of comfort in. So Singapore is kind of the best of both worlds, but if you have roots in China and business operations in China, absolutely Hong Kong makes perfect sense to be kind of the go-to setup jurisdiction. If you have no interest in China, no interest in the capital markets, access their RMB-based investments, businesses, whatever, it's really the Western nations where are the majority of our clients that we deal with. And people, like you say, have their preferences, but they will always default to what they feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more association with and familiarity with.
Yeah, and I think the locality thing is important. US people typically invest in jurisdictions close to the US. European people tend to invest in jurisdictions that are local to Europe. And that is partly due to, I don't know, there's this kind of it's funny, isn't it? Because you think about it, you're no closer to your money than you are as in front of a computer, right? But at the same time, if I told you to put your money in, I say a random jurisdiction, a high class one, but that was miles away from where you live or whatever, you might look at that and go, oh, that's a bit far away. Yeah. But actually, it's just like on your computer screen.
Yeah, it's still a few clicks away, realistically.
Yeah. But people like that locality thing. They like having assets based in places that they feel they can access.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was going to say, look at British expats here, international offshore accounts. It's always Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey.
Exactly. Yeah. Always places that they can.
Yeah, right on the outskirts of mainland Britain.
Yeah. So maybe that's a historical thing of when it wasn't so easy to just click a few buttons on a computer and get access to stuff. But maybe that's shifting a bit. Maybe people are, like we said, maybe some European people are looking at Switzerland now and going, actually, I want to put my money in Hong Kong. The world is much smaller now than it ever used to be.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the only other comment I was going to make was Hong Kong as the majority of the major world hubs, but the trust legislation is very robust and it does have certain benefits. There's an element of security and privacy associated with Hong Kong-based trusts. And again, we've had conversations with clients about utilizing those. But there were more Asian-orientated clients.
Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't come up all the time with me when I'm talking to people, but it has come up. And it is, and in fact, I've had 2 conversations over the last month with founders that are looking at, do they structure in Hong Kong or do they structure in UAE? So it is coming up. People are asking that question. But whether or not they go with one or the other, I think will depend on personal circumstances.
Yeah. So there you have it. Hong Kong overtaken Switzerland in terms of capitalization as a market hub. Very big news.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how it develops and if it is able to overcome that association with China that a lot of people are maybe a little bit less comfortable with.
Yeah.
As we've alluded to, Joe and I obviously do a lot of structuring in Hong Kong, Switzerland, Singapore, and international jurisdictions for clients, and then obviously the investment management and the banking side of things as well. There is a link to the Cross-Border Capitalist website in the description below. You can find out more information on Joe and myself and the work we do there. And of course, if you would like a private consultation, there is a form on the website as well. You can go and submit an application and we'll invite you to a private consultation.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.